As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the park, the tension in the air grew thicker. The boys hesitated, looking at one another with uncertainty. They had never met anyone like Mr. Johnson before. He wasn't scared of them. Instead, he seemed to challenge them in a way they had not expected. But Jake, wanting to assert his dominance, decided to break the silence. "What do you know about strength, old man?" he sneered, stepping forward again. "You're just a washed-up loser who sits in the park all day." Mr. Johnson remained calm, his eyes steady and filled with wisdom. "Strength comes in many forms," he replied. "It's not just about muscles or age. It's about courage and character. You can choose to be strong in kindness, or you can choose to show your strength through violence. What will it be?" Jake's friends exchanged glances, unsure of how to proceed. They had come to feel powerful by bullying someone they saw as weak, but now they felt a flicker of doubt. Yet Jake was not ready to back down. He felt the need to prove himself to his friends. With a sudden movement, Jake lunged at Mr. Johnson, throwing a punch aimed at his jaw. The old man, with reflexes honed by years of martial arts, easily sidestepped the blow. The punch missed its mark, and Jake stumbled forward, off balance. Mr. Johnson took a step back, still calm. "Is this what you call strength?" he asked, his voice firm. "Attacking someone who is unarmed. Real strength is in control and respect." The other boys watched in shock. They had never seen anyone move so quickly, especially an old man. But Jake was determined not to back down. He straightened himself and turned to his friends. "Come on, don't just stand there. Help me out," he shouted. The boys, feeling the pressure to support Jake, stepped forward. "Yeah, let's show him who's boss," one of them yelled, emboldened by Jake's aggression. They charged at Mr. Johnson together, a wave of youthful energy fueled by arrogance. Mr. Johnson took a deep breath, grounding himself. He was not here to fight, but he also knew he had to defend himself. As the first boy lunged at him, Mr. Johnson gracefully sidestepped again, using the boy's momentum against him. The boy stumbled and fell, landing on the grass with a thud. The remaining teens gasped, taken aback by the speed and skill of the old man. This wasn't the weak target they had imagined. "What the hell?" one of them muttered, eyes wide. Jake, fueled by embarrassment and anger, charged again, throwing punches wildly. Mr. Johnson ducked and dodged with ease, his movements fluid and precise. He was a man who had trained in karate for decades, and it showed. He gently redirected Jake's punches, keeping the boy from landing a single blow. "Stop, you're going to hurt yourself," Mr. Johnson warned as he deflected another punch, causing Jake to lose his balance again. The old man's voice was steady, but the warning was clear. This was not a game. It was a lesson in humility. But Jake was not listening. In a moment of desperation, he threw a wild kick, aiming for Mr. Johnson's side. The old man saw it coming and effortlessly caught Jake's foot, holding it firmly. "Is this how you show strength?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. The other boys stood frozen, watching in disbelief. Jake, trapped and embarrassed, struggled to break free, but Mr. Johnson held his grip steady. "Strength is not in violence. It is in wisdom and control," he said. "You have a choice to make." With a swift motion, Mr. Johnson let go of Jake's foot, sending him tumbling backward. The boy landed on the ground, breathing heavily, while his friends began to realize the gravity of the situation. As Jake scrambled to his feet, his face flushed with anger and humiliation, Mr. Johnson spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "You have the power to choose who you want to be. You can be a bully, or you can learn and grow. What you're doing is not strength, it's weakness." The words hung in the air like a thick fog, and the teens were silent. They had come to the park thinking they would assert their power over an old man, but now they were faced with the reality of their actions. They were scared, confused, and ashamed. Feeling the weight of their failure, The boys exchanged uncertain glances. Jake, filled with rage, made one last desperate attempt. "You think you're tough just because you can dodge a few punches. Let's see you handle this." He charged forward, fists raised. But Mr. Johnson stood his ground, ready to defend himself. "Enough," he called out, his voice commanding. "You do not need to prove anything to me. This is not about me. It's about you and the choices you make." With those words, something shifted in the air. The remaining teens looked at each other, realizing the old man was right. Their bravado began to fade. They had come looking for a fight, but instead, they had encountered a lesson. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the park around them began to quiet. The laughter of children faded, and the atmosphere shifted from one of aggression to contemplation. The teens stood there, unsure of what to do next. They had attacked a man they thought was weak, only to discover he was strong in ways they never understood. Mr. Johnson remained calm, waiting for them to process what had just happened. He knew this was a turning point for these boys. Perhaps, just perhaps, they would learn something valuable from this encounter. As the last rays of sunlight bathed the park in a warm glow, the tension between Mr. Johnson and the group of boys began to dissipate. They stood there, unsure and silent, grappling with the unexpected turn of events. The laughter of children playing in the distance felt like a stark contrast to the seriousness of the moment. Mr. Johnson watched them closely, sensing their internal struggle. He could see that they were beginning to realize the consequences of their actions. Instead of reacting with anger or resentment, he decided to seize this opportunity to teach them a valuable lesson about respect, strength, and kindness. "Why do you feel the need to hurt others?" Mr. Johnson asked, his voice steady and calm. The boys exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond. They were used to making jokes and being tough, but they had never been challenged like this before. "Come on, old man," Jake said, his bravado wavering. "It's just a bit of fun. We didn't mean anything by it." Mr. Johnson shook his head slowly. "Fun at the expense of others is not fun. It's a coward's game. True fun is shared, where everyone can laugh together, not at someone's pain." The boys shifted uncomfortably, reflecting on the truth in Mr. Johnson's words. They had come to the park seeking amusement by picking on an easy target, but it hadn't turned out the way they had expected. "We were just trying to impress each other," Tim mumbled, looking down at his shoes. Mr. Johnson nodded. "Impressing your friends is important, but there are better ways to do it. You can show your strength by being kind and helping those who are weaker." He paused, letting his words sink in. There is a saying in martial arts: "The greatest victory is the one that is achieved without fighting." Jake looked up, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "You mean we can be strong without fighting?" "Yes," Mr. Johnson replied. "Real strength lies in understanding and controlling your emotions. It's about lifting others up instead of tearing them down. You can become role models for your peers by choosing kindness over cruelty." The boys stood still, contemplating Mr. Johnson's message. They were starting to see things differently. The bravado that once fueled their actions began to fade, replaced by a dawning awareness of their own behavior. They realized they had the power to change, to choose a path of respect and kindness. "What if we want to learn?" Jake asked, his voice quieter now. "Can you teach us how to be strong?" A smile crept onto Mr. Johnson's face. "I can teach you martial arts, but it's not just about fighting. It's about discipline, respect, and balance. It's about learning to control yourself so that you don't hurt others." The boys exchanged hopeful glances. They had come looking for a way to feel powerful, and now they saw an opportunity to truly become strong. "Can we start today?" Tim asked, his excitement building. "Of course," Mr. Johnson replied, rising from the bench with newfound energy. "But first, let's discuss respect. Every martial artist must respect their opponent, their training, and themselves." The boys nodded, eager to learn. Mr. Johnson led them to an open space in the park, away from the bench. "Stand in a circle," he instructed, and the boys quickly complied. They were ready to shed their former attitudes and embrace something new. "Now let's begin with the basics," Mr. Johnson said. He demonstrated a simple stance, showing them how to stand strong yet balanced. Strength starts from the ground up. Your stance should be firm, but your body relaxed. Focus on your breathing. Inhale and exhale. He guided them through the motions, his calm voice leading the way. At first, the boys struggled to follow his instructions. They were used to roughhousing and joking around, not focusing on discipline and technique. But as Mr. Johnson patiently guided them through the motions, they began to understand. They could feel their bodies responding, becoming more aware of their movements. "Great. Now let's practice some basic punches," Mr. Johnson said. He demonstrated a simple jab and cross, explaining the importance of form and control. Remember, it's not about power, it's about precision. You want to hit your target without losing your balance. The boys started to practice, and laughter filled the air as they stumbled and fumbled their way through the punches. It was different from their usual mockery. Now, they were learning and having fun together. They felt a sense of camaraderie growing among them, something they hadn't experienced before. After several rounds of practice, Mr. Johnson gathered them back in a circle. "Martial arts is not just about fighting. It's about respect, discipline, and understanding," he reiterated. "If you want to be strong, you must first be kind. Strength and kindness go hand in hand." The boys listened intently, absorbing every word. They were beginning to understand that their actions had consequences. They could choose to uplift others instead of tearing them down. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the park, Mr. Johnson felt a sense of hope. The boys had taken their first steps toward becoming better individuals. They were learning that true strength came from within, and that they could change their lives for the better. With a newfound sense of purpose, Jake stepped forward. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We're sorry for how we acted earlier. We didn't realize how wrong we were." Mr. Johnson smiled warmly. "It's never too late to change. You have the power to create a better future for yourselves and those around you. Remember, every day it is a chance to choose kindness over cruelty." The boys nodded, determined to make a difference. They had encountered a powerful lesson that day, a lesson that would stay with them long after the sun had set. The transformation. The next day, as the sun rose and painted the sky with soft pastels, the boys gathered at the park once more, their hearts filled with excitement. They were eager to learn more from Mr. Johnson and to practice the lessons of kindness and strength he had instilled in them the day before. The atmosphere was different now. There was no bravado, no sense of superiority, only a shared commitment to grow and change. As the boys arrived, Mr. Johnson was already there, waiting patiently. He greeted them with a warm smile, his presence radiating calm and encouragement. "Good morning. I'm glad to see you all back," he said, his voice steady and inviting. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson." The boys replied in unison, their enthusiasm evident. "Today, we'll continue with the basics and introduce some self-defense techniques," he announced. The boys cheered, feeling a mix of anticipation and nervousness. They were ready to learn, but they also knew they had to earn Mr. Johnson's trust. "First, let's start with some warm-ups. It's essential to prepare your body," he instructed, leading them through stretching exercises. The boys followed along, feeling their muscles awaken and their energy levels rise. As they moved together, they began to forge a bond, a sense of unity that they hadn't experienced before. After the warm-ups, Mr. Johnson gathered them in a circle. "Today's lesson is about awareness," he began. "In martial arts, being aware of your surroundings is crucial. It's not just about physical strength. It's about being mentally alert and understanding your environment." The boys listened intently as Mr. Johnson explained how awareness could help prevent conflict before it escalated. "You can avoid fights by understanding the feelings and intentions of those around you," he said. "When you are aware, you can choose peace instead of violence." As he spoke, the boys reflected on their past behaviors. They remembered how they had acted without thinking, allowing their emotions to guide their actions. They realized that being aware meant taking a step back and evaluating the situation before reacting. "Let's practice some scenarios," Mr. Johnson suggested. He paired the boys up and had them role-play different situations where conflict might arise. One boy would act as the aggressor while the other practiced using their awareness to diffuse the situation. At first, the role-playing felt awkward, but as they practiced, they began to understand the importance of communication and empathy. They learned how to talk through their differences instead of resorting to anger or aggression. "I see you're upset," one boy said during a practice scenario. "Let's talk about it instead of fighting." "Exactly," Mr. Johnson encouraged. "Empathy is a powerful tool. It helps you connect with others and understand their feelings. When you can empathize, you can turn potential conflict into an opportunity for dialogue." After the role-playing exercises, the boys sat down on the grass, exhausted but exhilarated. They had taken significant strides in understanding themselves and each other. Mr. Johnson smiled at them, proud of their progress. "You've all done wonderfully today. Remember, awareness and empathy will guide you through difficult situations." Feeling a newfound sense of camaraderie, Jake spoke up. "We want to keep learning, Mr. Johnson. Can we meet every day?" A wave of excitement spread among the boys. They were eager to embrace this journey of self-improvement together. Mr. Johnson's eyes twinkled as he responded, "Absolutely. The more you practice, the better you will become. Just remember that this journey is not only about learning martial arts, but also about becoming better friends and better people." From that day forward, the boys met with Mr. Johnson every afternoon. They trained diligently, mastering various techniques, while also focusing on the principles of respect, kindness, and self-awareness. They were determined to change their lives and the lives of those around them. As weeks passed, the boys transformed both physically and mentally. They grew stronger, more confident, and more compassionate. They began to stand up for others instead of bullying them. Whenever they saw someone being picked on, they intervened, using their newfound skills to diffuse the situation peacefully. One day, while practicing in the park, they noticed a group of younger kids playing nearby. A couple of older boys were teasing them, shoving them, and laughing at their expense. The transformation within the group of boys was palpable. Instead of ignoring the situation or joining in, they stepped forward. "Hey, leave them alone," Jake shouted, his voice firm. The older boys turned to face them, surprised. They had expected these boys to back down, but instead, they stood united, ready to defend the younger kids. "What are you going to do about it?" one of the older boys sneered, trying to intimidate them. Mr. Johnson had taught them well. Jake took a deep breath, remembering the lessons of empathy. "We're not looking for a fight. We just want everyone to have fun. How about we play a game together instead?" The older boys paused, unsure of how to react. They had been expecting a confrontation, but Jake's approach took them by surprise. "You want to play?" one of them asked, still skeptical. "Yeah, let's play soccer," Jake offered, motioning to the younger kids who were watching in awe. The atmosphere shifted from hostility to curiosity as the younger kids joined in. With a bit of hesitation, the older boys agreed, and soon they were all playing together. Laughter filled the air as the game unfolded. The boys had turned a potential conflict into a fun experience for everyone involved. After the game, the older boys walked away, no longer interested in bullying the younger kids. They had witnessed a new kind of strength, one that came from kindness and the ability to unite rather than divide. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the park, Mr. Johnson watched from a distance, pride swelling in his chest. The boys had come a long way, and he knew this was just the beginning of their journey. They were no longer just a group of teens looking to assert dominance. They had become leaders in their community, advocating for respect and compassion. The transformation of these boys was a testament to the power of understanding and connection. Mr. Johnson knew that they would continue to grow, not only in their martial arts skills, but also in their hearts. They had learned that true strength lies not in physical power, but in the ability to uplift others and make the world a better place. The challenge. As the days turned into weeks, the boys continued to meet with Mr. Johnson, deepening their understanding of martial arts and life lessons. They had become a close-knit group, united by their shared experiences and growth. They had transformed from bullies into role models, and the change had begun to ripple through their community. One afternoon, while they were practicing in the park, a buzz of excitement filled the air. A flyer announcing a local martial arts tournament had been posted on a nearby tree. The tournament was open to all ages, and it promised to be a thrilling event. The boys gathered around the flyer, their eyes wide with anticipation. "Should we enter?" Tim asked, his voice trembling with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "I think we should," Jake replied, his competitive spirit ignited. "It would be a great way to test what we've learned." Mr. Johnson approached, sensing their eagerness. Entering a tournament can be a valuable experience, but remember, it's not just about winning. It's about showing what you've learned and demonstrating respect for your opponents. The boys nodded, understanding the importance of Mr. Johnson's words. They wanted to show the community how far they had come and how they had embraced kindness and strength. "Let's do it," they all exclaimed, their enthusiasm contagious. Over the next few weeks, they trained harder than ever. Mr. Johnson guided them through every technique, emphasizing discipline, respect, and self-control. They practiced sparring with each other, learning to defend themselves while remaining aware of their opponent's feelings. The lessons of awareness and empathy became even more crucial as they prepared for the tournament. As the tournament day approached, the boys felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. They wanted to make Mr. Johnson proud and show everyone that they had changed for the better. On the day of the tournament, they arrived at the venue early, their hearts racing with anticipation. The gymnasium was packed with spectators, and the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Bright banners decorated the walls, and the sound of cheering filled the air. The boys looked at each other, their nerves palpable. "We can do this," Jake said, trying to rally the group. "Remember everything Mr. Johnson taught us." As the tournament began, they watched other competitors showcase their skills. Some were younger, some older, but everyone had worked hard to be there. The boys felt a sense of camaraderie with the other fighters, understanding that they were all on their own journeys. When it was finally their turn to compete, they lined up on the mat, their hearts pounding. Mr. Johnson stood at the sidelines, his presence reassuring. "Remember to stay calm, focus on your technique, and most importantly, show respect to your opponents," he reminded them. Jake was the first to face his opponent, a boy who looked determined and ready. They bowed to each other, a gesture of respect, and the match began. Jake focused on his breathing, recalling the drills he had practiced with Mr. Johnson. He moved swiftly, using the techniques he had learned, but he also remained aware of his opponent's movements. As they sparred, Jake remembered to listen to the rhythm of the match instead of just reacting. The crowd cheered as Jake executed a well-timed move, gaining the upper hand. But instead of pushing his advantage, he paused, looking into his opponent's eyes. He saw the determination and spirit reflected back at him. Instead of exploiting the moment, Jake chose to respect his opponent's effort, allowing the match to flow naturally. In the end, Jake won the match, but he felt a sense of satisfaction beyond victory. He had fought with honor and respect. As he stepped off the mat, he felt a wave of pride wash over him, not just for winning, but for embodying the lessons he had learned from Mr. Johnson. One by one, the other boys faced their opponents, each match a reflection of their growth. They each displayed strength and respect, making sure to uplift their competitors regardless of the outcome. When Tim lost his match, he approached his opponent and shook his hand, a gesture that resonated deeply with both of them. They exchanged smiles, understanding that it was more than just a game. It was a shared experience of growth and respect. As the tournament continued, the boys advanced through the rounds, each match pushing them to showcase their skills and embody the principles Mr. Johnson had instilled in them. The final match was intense, with the whole gymnasium filled with anticipation. Jake found himself facing a strong opponent who had also reached the final round. The atmosphere was electric, the crowd buzzing with excitement. As they bowed to each other, Jake remembered Mr. Johnson's words. This match wasn't just about winning. It was a chance to show everything they had learned. The match began, and they exchanged blows, each trying to find an opening. But Jake focused not only on the competition, but also on the connection he felt with his opponent. He recognized that they were both there to grow, not just to fight. The match reached a critical moment, and both boys were evenly matched. They exchanged a few blows, each pushing the other to their limits. Finally, Jake made a swift move that led him to victory. But instead of celebrating his win, he extended a hand to his opponent, helping him up. "You fought well," Jake said, genuine admiration in his voice. The crowd erupted in applause, not just for the match, but for the sportsmanship displayed by both fighters. Mr. Johnson watched proudly from the sidelines, knowing that these boys had transformed into not just skilled martial artists, but also compassionate individuals. As the tournament concluded, the boys gathered with Mr. Johnson, their hearts swelling with pride. They had done it. They had competed, learned, and shown respect to their opponents. The journey they had embarked on had changed them in ways they never imagined possible. They were no longer just boys looking for power. They were young men committed to strength through kindness. That day, they learned that true victory is not just about winning a match. It's about growing, understanding, and uplifting others. Their transformation was a testament to the power of empathy and respect, and they knew they would carry these lessons with them for the rest of their lives. Facing the past, with the tournament behind them, the boys felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had not only grown as martial artists, but also as individuals. The lessons they learned about respect, kindness, and empathy resonated deeply within them. They had each faced their fears and insecurities and emerged stronger. As they continued to train with Mr. Johnson, they began to give back to their community. They started volunteering at a local youth center, where they taught younger kids the basics of martial arts and the importance of respect and kindness. The experience was rewarding, as they witnessed the same transformation in the younger kids that they had gone through themselves. One afternoon, as they were finishing up a class, a group of older teens approached the center. It was the same group that had bullied them before, led by a boy named Derek. He stood at the entrance, a smirk on his face, flanked by a couple of his friends. The atmosphere shifted as the boys recognized them. Memories of fear and anger flooded back. "Look who's playing teacher now," Derek sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What, you think you're tough now just because you learned some karate?" The boys exchanged nervous glances. Jake felt his heart race. He remembered the fear they had felt in the past and how they had let their emotions guide their actions. This was a test of their growth. Mr. Johnson had taught them to respond with awareness, not anger. Taking a deep breath, Jake stepped forward. "We're not trying to be tough, Derek. We're just trying to help the younger kids learn something positive." Derek laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the room. "Help? You think teaching them karate makes you better than us?" "No," Jake replied calmly. "It makes us better than we used to be. We don't want to hurt anyone anymore. We want to create a safe space for everyone." Derek's friends looked at him, unsure. "What are you gonna do? Fight us?" one of them challenged. The boys felt tension rise in the air, but Jake remembered Mr. Johnson's teachings. Instead of reacting with anger, he chose to diffuse the situation. "We don't want to fight," Jake said firmly, "but we will stand up for ourselves and for others. If you want to talk, we're willing to listen." The older boys paused, their expressions shifting from mockery to confusion. They weren't expecting this response. Jake's words hung in the air, challenging their assumptions. The other boys, emboldened by Jake's bravery, began to speak up as well. "Yeah, it's about time we all learn to be better," Tim added, stepping beside Jake. "You can change too, Derek. It's not too late." Derek's facade began to crack as he felt the weight of their words. "What are you talking about?" He spat, trying to maintain his bravado. "It means we can all grow," Jake replied. "We've learned that strength is not about bullying others, but about lifting them up. We don't have to be enemies." There was a moment of silence as Derek's friends shifted uncomfortably. They exchanged glances, unsure of what to do next. The challenge Jake posed was difficult for them to process. "You think you're all that just because you learned a few moves." Derek scoffed, but the edge in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "No," Jake responded calmly. "We just want to share what we've learned. If you're interested, we can show you." The idea surprised everyone, including the older boys. Derek hesitated, but something in Jake's sincerity made him pause. "You really think we'd want to learn from you?" He scoffed, but it lacked conviction. "Why not?" Tim said. "We're all just trying to get better. It doesn't matter where we come from. What matters is where we're going." Derek seemed to consider it, his bravado slipping slightly. "I don't need your help," he said, but his tone lacked its previous confidence. "Maybe not," Jake replied. "But if you ever change your mind, we're here. We're trying to make this place better for everyone." With that, the older boys turned and walked away, leaving the younger ones in stunned silence. The boys exchanged glances, realizing they had just faced a pivotal moment. They had chosen a path of peace instead of conflict. After the older boys left, Mr. Johnson approached them, a proud smile on his face. "You handled that beautifully," he praised. "You stood your ground without resorting to anger. That is true strength." The boys beamed at his words, feeling the weight of their growth. They had faced their past and chosen to rise above it. It was a significant step forward for each of them. As the days went on, the boys continued their work at the youth center, building a positive community around them. They shared their experiences and knowledge with the younger kids, emphasizing the importance of respect, empathy, and understanding. However, the encounter with Derek lingered in their minds. They hoped that one day he might realize the power of change, just as they had. They knew that it wasn't easy to break free from the cycles of bullying and aggression, but they had learned that every small step mattered. As the boys trained harder and continued to grow, they learned to embrace their past while looking forward to the future. They were no longer defined by their mistakes, but by their choices and actions moving forward. One day, as they were practicing outside, a familiar face approached. It was Derek, accompanied by a couple of his friends. The boys tensed up, unsure of what to expect. I've been thinking about what you said," Derek admitted, his voice less confident than before. "I didn't really mean what I said before. Can you teach me some of those moves?" The boys were taken aback. This was a moment they hadn't anticipated. Jake stepped forward, a smile breaking across his face. "Of course. We'd be happy to help. It's never too late to learn." Derek's friends exchanged uncertain glances, but they followed his lead. The boys welcomed them with open arms, ready to guide them on a new path. In that moment, the power of empathy and understanding transformed their past struggles into a new beginning. Together, they took their first steps toward a brighter future, proving that change is always possible when hearts are open. A new beginning. With Derek and his friends joining the younger boys at the youth center, a new chapter began for everyone involved. The atmosphere was charged with excitement and a hint of nervousness. The boys knew they were stepping into uncharted territory, but they were determined to make it work. At first, there was some hesitation from Derek's friends. They were unsure how to approach the younger boys who had once been the targets of their taunts, but with encouragement from Jake and Tim, they slowly warmed up to the idea of teamwork and learning together. During their first training session, Mr. Johnson watched closely from the sidelines. He could see the uncertainty in the air, but also a glimmer of hope. As the boys paired up, he reminded them, "Remember, every master was once a beginner. Show respect to each other and support one another as you learn." The training started with simple drills, focusing on basic movements and stances. Jake partnered with Derek, showing him the techniques they had practiced for weeks. "Just breathe and stay focused," Jake advised, demonstrating a simple kick. Derek followed, initially struggling but gradually finding his rhythm. "You're getting it," Jake encouraged, noticing Derek's determination. The transition from past adversaries to training partners felt surreal, yet they were both committed to making it work. As they practiced, laughter and encouragement filled the air. The boys shared stories of their experiences in the tournament and what they had learned from Mr. Johnson. They also took turns sparring, discovering the importance of cooperation rather than competition. With each passing day, the bonds between the groups grew stronger. They became friends, not just training partners. They discovered common interests, shared laughs, and supported each other through challenges. The barriers of their past began to crumble, replaced by a sense of unity and shared purpose. One afternoon, while they were practicing, a group of younger kids from the neighborhood stopped by to watch. They were eager and full of energy, drawn to the activity. Tim, noticing their excitement, suggested, "Why don't we invite them to join us?" The boys agreed, excited to pass on the lessons they had learned. They approached the younger kids and invited them to participate in the next training session. "We can all learn together," Tim exclaimed. The younger kids beamed at the invitation, their eyes wide with excitement. They eagerly agreed, and soon they were all practicing together, the sound of laughter and encouragement filling the park. As the weeks turned into months, the youth center became a safe haven for the community. Boys and girls of all ages trained together, learning not only martial arts but also the importance of respect, empathy, and teamwork. The once divided community began to unite, creating a positive environment for everyone. One day, Mr. Johnson called everyone together for an important announcement. "I've been watching all of you grow, not just as martial artists, but as individuals," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You have created something beautiful here, a community built on respect and understanding. I am proud of each and every one of you." The boys exchanged proud glances, their hearts swelling with pride. They knew they had come a long way from the bullies they once were. They had transformed their pain into purpose and created a place where everyone felt welcome. As a reward for their hard work and dedication, Mr. Johnson announced a community demonstration event. "This will be a chance for all of you to showcase what you've learned," he said. "But remember, it's not just about showing off your skills. It's about sharing your journey and inspiring others." The boys began to prepare for the event, excited yet nervous. They worked together, creating routines that highlighted their individual strengths and the bond they had formed as a team. They practiced tirelessly, encouraging each other every step of the way. On the day of the demonstration, the community gathered to witness the progress of the young martial artists. Families, friends, and neighbors filled the park, eagerly waiting for the event to begin. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. As the boys stepped onto the stage, they felt a mix of excitement and nerves. They exchanged glances, each of them silently reassuring one another. With a deep breath, they began their performance, showcasing their skills and the lessons they had learned. The crowd cheered and clapped, their support echoing through the park. As the boys finished their routine, they stood together, beaming with pride. They had not only demonstrated their martial arts abilities, but also the power of friendship, respect, and growth. As the event concluded, Mr. Johnson stepped forward to address the crowd. "Today, you have witnessed the transformation of these young men. They are no longer defined by their past, but by the choices they have made to create a better future for themselves and their community." Derek, standing among his friends, felt a surge of gratitude. He looked around at the smiling faces and realized how far he had come. He had once been filled with anger and resentment, but now he stood proud among his friends, ready to inspire others. In the following weeks, the youth center continued to thrive. The boys welcomed new members, sharing their experiences and teaching them the importance of kindness and respect. They knew that their journey was just beginning, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.